Hey there, you're watching the after show for Grace and Frankie here at AfterBuzz TV, and we're going to be discussing episodes 5 and 6, some pretty juicy stuff going on, so you better stay tuned, okay?
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
We were going to open with a different song, but I was viciously shut down from my dreams. We also wanted to give a very happy birthday to one of our beautiful hosts.
Pretty in pink and pretty as always.
And we'd like to introduce ourselves as well. So let's all go through and say who we are, shall we?
Hi guys, I'm Joelle Monique. You can find me everywhere at Joelle Monique.
Hi everyone, I'm Dani Golub, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, at Dani Golub.
Zach Kelch, you guys can follow me at that name. Why did I just say stutter?
File me. I thought
File me.
Put you
File.
in our address book.
I'm sure my name is filed under Zach Kelch somewhere since
hopefully.
the
census.
Maybe an adult like location, like Social Security.
Stop you there.
And my name is Lauren Lograsso. You can find me at Lauren Lograsso. And again, a happy birthday to Dani.
Woo. Thanks.
She's looking beautiful today. And, we're going to go through some beautiful episodes of television as well.
We are.
So the first episode is The Test, episode 205. So it starts out Frankie studying for her driver's test because, as we found out, her license is expired.
Well, I think what's nice about this is they, as they always do, I feel like they always kind of transition their episodes. The beginning of one episode really wraps up the previous one. So this is them getting back from the failed trip to go meet Phil. And so Grace is still very visibly upset about that and kind of recoiling from that. And the whole motivation for her to get her license renewed is kind of almost an apology to Grace because Frankie feels so bad for forcing her to go on this journey that blew up in her face.
Right. And I mean, driving her everywhere too. I think also she feels guilty about that because she realizes it's getting annoying. But she chooses to study while wearing a Rastafarian hat.
That was my favorite.
Yeah,
she had a whole
smoking pot.
outfit, her robe.
And she was listening to the music too.
Yeah.
Right. She ripped a big hit too right before she started. She was going for it. I was like, all right.
I wonder how they make that happen. Like, what do you use to recreate that? Like, are they actually smoking something?
No, they have like a stage thing. Like, it's the same with cigarettes. Like, you can't smoke an actual cigarette outside.
Dry ice, like sitting in there that is making water vapor.
You can't inhale
I was gonna say, I feel like that'd murder you.
Yeah, it probably would burn your throat.
Fair.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like, do you think it's like an effect they put in after?
It could be. Honestly,
They
I have
can
no
do a
idea.
practical effect with it. They have like the same stuff they use for like the Seth Rogen movies and things.
Right.
Right. I always assumed he was
just
definitely.
I always
Yeah.
assumed that was real.
I was
for
always
sure.
okay.
We'll have to check on all these things and get back to you next week. Do some research. So she's studying for that. And at the same time, Gracie, I always want to call her Gracie, but it's the wrong name for her.
Gracie.
But Grace is realizing she is kind of sick of Frankie, like in a loving way, but that she doesn't really have any friends anymore outside of her.
It's too much of a codependent friendship for them right now.
She had a really funny line. She goes, "Why would we want to build a new history right before we become history?" You know, in terms of making new friends. And I feel like that's a mentality that people can get at any age. You know, like they always think it's too late to meet new people or too late to make new friends. I feel like a lot of people, like when they first graduate from school or something, feel like, how am I supposed to make friends now in the real world? And so I think that this is like an interesting, relatable thing for anyone, not just for someone who's in like later in their life. I'm sure it gets even harder as you get older because, people are married with kids, and so your lives just don't always match up with other people's. But I can't even imagine being in their position, and especially with hers. She knew these people that she was going to hang out with like as a totally different version of herself than what she is now.
Right.
Like she was in a different life, different place in her life. So I can only imagine what it would be like going back to that group.
The basic bitches.
Yeah,
That's what I call them.
The mean girls. The mean girls it's like Regina George all grown up.
Yeah, it is.
Totally.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the laughing lady was definitely, what was...
Gretchen Wieners, or
Not
Karen?
Gretchen.
No,
Karen.
Karen.
She was so Karen.
For sure.
So Frankie goes to take her test, and Grace drives her there, obviously, because she still can't drive. At this point, I was glad they brought up Uber later, because I'm like, have they ever heard of Uber?
Right.
They seem tech savvy enough where that would be something that they would understand.
Absolutely.
But glad they brought it up later. And Frankie doesn't pass, and I guess it's the third time she tried, and she didn't pass, so she has to wait a week.
I thought you had to wait like 6 months after that.
I feel like that's more accurate, but I don't know. I guess they probably wouldn't put it in the show unless it was real.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I had a few friends fail, and like I remember them being very concerned after like the second time, because I think the third time like is a you'd have to wait a certain amount of time. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm surprised that it was only a week after the third time.
I believe after the third time you have to then do the driver's test instead of just the written.
I don't even remember the written test.
I had to do the driver's
I
test.
still haven't even done the California test.
What?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're just illegally driving on the roads?
A little bit.
We won't tell anyone. It's not
Just
like it's
the
up
internet.
anywhere.
Any police officers who tune in.
Nothing that's living in perpetuity. But yeah, so she doesn't pass, and she says, okay, well, you're going to have to come help me set up this party then, because that's your penance for this terrible task you've just done. So she's helping her set up, and Frankie ends up sitting in with the ladies as they come in. And the ladies, okay, when they come in, it's like ice cold and then the stupid one.
Right.
So, I mean, at least she was a little bit more warm, the laugher.
Yeah, they were just fake.
Well,
you know?
and then the second one, she is the one who kind of seems to be the most talkative of the three, and she's the one who actually asks Frankie to sit down with them. And I mean, at that point, then you could see Grace was frustrated, because you kind of can't just be like, no, she had to leave, because now she's in a predicament of, well, now I can't be rude because of the prim and properness that they always appear. It'd be a bad hostess to like send her away. So they sit down, and the first moments are more than uncomfortable between the five of them clicking.
Yeah. But it seemed like Frankie didn't want to stay either, but then Grace made her.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Yeah, I love the little side comments she's making, because I feel like she's the voice of the audience a lot of the time.
Oh,
yes.
And so she
definitely.
says things that a lot of times we'd like to say if we were in a situation like that, but we wouldn't have the guts to.
When she mimicked the laugher when they were playing, it was great.
So funny.
That's actually a really good idea, though, especially if you're with someone who's unaware. Just mimic them and they won't even notice.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually watched this episode with my sister, and she's never watched the show before, and like right off the bat she was like, I love her, I love that Frankie character, you know. So like people just like pick up on her energy, and like you said, I think she really says what even someone who doesn't follow up what the show is feeling.
Yeah, I feel that she's even more on fire this year. She was amazing last year, but this year she just really shines. Like every episode, she steals the show.
Keeps me wanting to come back. Honestly, it's like her and Brianna are the two characters that I like can't get enough of. Like I love Grace, and I think Jane Fonda is like a genius.
She's a legend.
But at the same time, like her character, I don't relate to as much. That's not really like me, and so I feel like Frankie is not only hilarious, but it's like a lot more relatable. Everything she says, I feel like could come out of my own mouth. So it's fun to like listen to her.
Well, I think maybe part of that is because Frankie so much knows who she is, and and that's not really her, I think, arc right now. It's not figuring out who she is. It's kind of navigating where she goes, where I think it's the opposite for Grace. Grace is now actually really figuring out who she is, because she had a relationship that stifled her so much, where it was the opposite. So I think as a viewer, we probably can relate to the loving yourself and free spirit of Frankie versus Grace's kind of own self-doubting and questioning. And especially with these ladies, it's like, I feel like you could almost feel, especially by the end of the episode, you knew, but you could feel that she was putting on a front and a facade to make it feel like this was normal again, when it isn't anymore.
But one of the things I liked about this was that it showed how much I don't know, how much Grace has grown since the divorce, and how much she's changed from these people that she's nothing like now. And I also like how much Frankie has had an effect on Grace.
Yeah.
Like I think she didn't want her to go, to be like, you're the sane person here, and I need you to make sure that this doesn't go off the rails, and also kind of a punching bag on the side, because she'd be like the weird one out. But I've been really identifying with Grace, especially as we get into the next episode. I really like where her storyline's kind of going.
I think it's interesting, this scene, or this episode, I guess, and this scene in specific, is to kind of try to relate to the fact that there are real friends that you have and fake friends that you have, kind of. Like, I always find that there are some friends that I have that are just kind of social friends that, like, I go out with and have a good time with sometimes, but, like, they aren't people that I could, like, actually sit at a meal with and have a good conversation with.
They're not soul friends.
Yeah, they're not someone who, like, actually gets you and wants to be with you, and I feel like sometimes those people are the most different from you. Like, a couple of my friends that I made at camp are so different from me. Like, if you picked us out of a room, you would never imagine that we'd be friends, but like we get each other on a human level, whereas some people that like in college I went out with and stuff, like we seemed like we'd be great friends on paper, but really it was just social friends, you know? Yeah. So I think this was a really good example of that. Like Grace's friends that she probably thought were real friends for a long time are actually just more of like social friends. They were someone that like looked good for her to go out with and was all part of this like facade she created, whereas Frankie, she's found a real friend, and even though they're really different, she kind of realizes that maybe being in this situation. I feel like watching it, I definitely could relate to that, and I identified with that part of this episode.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And I also, to circle back, love what you said, Zach. It's like, it's so true, and I never thought of it that way. And in that way, I do associate with Grace. Like, she's entering a new phase of her life and having to rediscover herself and say, like, wait, is what I always held true to who I was really who I am?
Right.
And that's a really hard question to answer.
Right.
You know? Sometimes our perception of ourselves and who we really want to be deep down is different. So it's interesting. She's kind of on a much deeper path than Frankie is, actually.
Absolutely.
Which is cool that you brought that up. So then, well, thank you. The bowling comes up, okay? So they used to all bowl together, and Grace says she wants to get back in the game, literally.
Right.
But they don't bowl with balls.
Wii bowling.
Yeah, they do Wii bowling.
Which, by the way, is so fun.
It's
love
so
it.
fun, but in no way is it the same thing as bowling. Like, literally, you could do whatever you wanted, and
like,
I feel like it's almost just like a
fling your arm
crapshoot.
around. Yeah. It's the same. It's the exact same motion that you do when you play Wii tennis. Like, it's like the exact same thing.
Something else.
I love that they wore bowling outfits with like shirts. And can we just say Grace did a really great job of tailoring
she is
that
a
shirt.
seamstress.
She was on it, and it looked great.
She looks good.
Cinch that waist, baby. I like that. Yeah, and the Wii thing. I mean, it's so silly, but I guess it doesn't seem likely, but maybe in this world it is.
I think it seemed like a little bit of a bizarre thing to make a focus of the episode, but ultimately it really did kind of lead to the conversation that Dani was saying. You know, it just
fake. It's a metaphor.
It is.
Ooh,
interesting.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It kind of just gives a very superficial setting for her to determine something very real about herself. And when it comes time for her to meet all the ladies and have this Wii tournament with the older gentlemen, and she quickly becomes so uncomfortable because now
they're talking crap about Frankie.
They're talking crap about Frankie, and then they pitch this new guy to her who just divorced a close friend of hers, and all of a sudden he's there.
He was so thin.
He looked good.
That was what I noticed.
He was fit.
Together.
Yeah. When you walked in, I was like, okay.
Silver fox.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately,
line pants.
I mean, she just had this. She had a moment where she really stood up for herself, and if even more so, once they started talking about that crazy hippie Frankie, and you could see Grace get so upset. It was the first time where I was like I really loved this friendship and Grace on the other side of it, because Grace rarely kind of admits to how much this friendship means to her, and so
she stood up
for her to
Frankie.
stand up for Frankie with Frankie not even being around,
it was awesome
amazing.
to see. I haven't seen her do that yet. What did she say? She's like, this year she's been there for me, like
No one
more
else
than
has.
any of them had,
Yeah.
And so,
in a very real way. That's what she said.
Yeah, and they were just saying, do you really want to live the rest of your life with this weirdo, and she's holding you back and all this stuff. And if anything, I think that Frankie has pushed Grace forward 100 more miles than these people ever would have and ever could have, And so
life
I think
is more than martinis and Pomeranians.
yeah, sometimes.
Once in a blue moon, it truly is.
I mean, I would have a Pomeranian every moon, but
But yeah, it was really cool to watch her stand up for Frankie.
It was. Yeah. She really went there, and Frankie has helped her become a much better person. She's more of a person now. She's not like one of those walking zombies like the other women were.
Right.
So it's cool to see, and it was also cool to see her say no to that guy. Like, I think the Grace of the past would have said, "Fine, yeah, I'll get some purpose from dating him."
Right.
She said no. She's standing on her own
We
two
talked
feet.
about that last episode, how we kind of have felt that a lot of Grace's identity and growth has been through a man, and for the first time, I think this episode it hasn't been. I think maybe that Phil character had something to do with that, because maybe if that hadn't happened, she would have been tempted by that. And I think that that's like a lot of self-discovery for anyone. Like our whole world makes us feel like you have to have a partner, like that's part of success and all this stuff. And so I could see how it would be really hard to go to that thing that was all couples, like by yourself. When I saw her walk in, like I said, I was watching with my sister who doesn't watch this show. She was like, wow, that's brave of her, you know, just to like walk in there and be independent. And like she had an opportunity to be set up with someone and didn't take it, which like showed that she actually found herself a little bit over the last, you know, couple episodes.
Yeah. You guys, why wasn't Jerry wearing the bowling shirt? That was my one question. He was wearing what, like a floral pattern?
I think those were all from like their old league, and Jerry like wasn't a part of it because he had this other wife. Maybe you know what I mean?
No, remember they literally invited him at the last second, like when the girls were just like, well, we weren't gonna throw him on you, but then we decided to, so they literally like invited him in the 10 minutes that they were talking about it.
Yeah,
they must have called him and like, get over here. Grace wants to see
I think
you.
the shirts were also like from like the vintage days,
right?
You know, like when Grace pulled out the old shirt, and then she was like, I have to fix this, you know?
Right.
Well, then she leaves because she's sick of it, and she goes to see Frankie taking her little test. And well, actually, no, we forgot to mention this part that Frankie like was trying to study again, and Coyote and Bud were both scared that she's losing her memory because she wasn't remembering anything.
Which really actually upset me. I was really worried that the show was going to go down a really
I'm like,
dark
don't
path.
go down that path. But maybe they are, and maybe they're going to bookmark that for the future.
I don't know. I just really made me upset.
I don't think so. Later, when Grace and Frankie have the conversation again about it, they deal with it in such a lighthearted way. Like, I'm going to keep you in check if you keep me in check. That I think that was probably sweeping it under the rug.
I got really like got a bad feeling in my stomach.
I was like, oh, it's about to get dark.
I was like, so nervous.
Me too. I was like, don't do this to Frankie. Like, I can't watch this show if this is where it's about to go. But no. Yeah.
We don't need to deal with that right now. We got enough stuff going on in our lives.
So they're old school flashcards testing her. Mm-hmm. And H is for hoagie on the side of the road.
I mean, if that were true, it'd be really nice.
I love how she goes like, if that's not true, then I have a great idea for an app. Like the nearest big sandwich to you is...
It's not a bad idea. Sure. In Michigan, the cool thing that we have are these signs that tell you food places.
Right.
And I wish they had them here.
You know, they do on like on the 5. Like if you're driving up to San Francisco or something, they like it tells you like in 3 miles, and it gives you like the little icons of
what. They should do it down here.
They really should. I lived in Wisconsin for 4 years, and they had them there too.
Isn't it helpful?
It's like, oh, I have options. I could go to get Buffalo Wild Wings, Jimmy John's. I have like all these, and like
I feel like every exit in LA has food though. Like whereas like I grew up in rural.
You don't know, but what am I getting? I need a sign to be my visual Yelp when I'm driving.
There is a big difference between like Wendy's and like Jack in the Box.
In-N-Out.
This fair.
In-N-Out's, God, that's a commitment. But anyway.
I don't think her idea was that far off from that. So support for your girl. But she's like, I don't know, am I losing my memory? And then Grace comes up to her and basically, in her own way, in her own kind of passive-aggressive way, reassures her like, hey, I think you're fine, whatever. And she's like, well, you were smoking pot. Maybe that was the reason why you didn't do well. And so the next morning... backfires because the next morning when she comes down with her bowling shirt, when Grace comes down with her bowling shirt, she sees Frankie sitting there hitting up the bong.
With the beanie on.
With the Rastafarian beanie, playing her music, getting ready to go take her test. And so Grace is like, what the heck is going on here? And Frankie said, I took your advice, your sage advice. And she goes, I didn't give you that advice. I told you not to. She's like, exactly. I did the exact opposite of what you said.
That's like a thing, though. You're supposed to take the test how you study for the test. I have a lot of friends that they would chew gum when they studied, so they have to chew gum during the test. Like, that's like a psych thing. I forget. They said the name of what it was in there. I actually forget the term, but I learned that when I was in some college class. Who knows, like some
I think it's true.
Class. It is a thing though. Like a lot of times people will tell you not to like listen to music when you're studying if you're not going to be able to listen to it when you take a test. I think a lot of that comes up with like drug use also too, like not just smoking but like Adderall or things that people use as like, you know, enhancements. If you can't do it when you're taking the test, you shouldn't do it when you study. I don't think it would be as dramatic as like actually forgetting everything, like what's happening to Frankie. But I think that actually is a legitimate psychological study.
So she gets high as a kite and
high as a kite, brings her vape, and she's vaping while she's taking this.
In the DMV.
Wait, did you love it when she goes, Coyote? That's a weird name for a baby.
I died. Yeah.
I laughed so hard, but she ends up passing, right? And Grace.
They had weird rules though. She like can't drive at night and can't drive on the freeway
because then she had to take just a vision test.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's because she was high.
Yeah, she's like, I passed, but I can't drive at night. I can't drive on the freeway. So Grace was like, I guess I'm driving. She goes, yeah, it looks like the sun's going down. Yeah, she can't. So like she could drive from like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. pretty much.
But she did it. And I liked her glass half full mentality at the end.
Right.
She said, okay, well, we could look at it like you have no friends and I have just, like a half a license. But you could also look at it like I have half a driver's license more than I had yesterday. And what did she say about her friends? Like, and you've got one real friend now or something like that. So I thought it was just a really nice package that we ended up with.
It was a cute episode.
This episode ended nicer than next.
Oh my God.
We'll get there.
Well, they saw my reaction to the end of the last one because I was catching up right before we started. And good God.
Really
The
a
chicken.
cliffhanger.
What a bomb they dropped.
This is when the watching only 2 episodes at a time really gets me.
Oh.
Yes.
I was like,
yes.
Netflix was asking me like 19, 18, to start the next episode. I was like, do it. No, don't do it.
But you could do it right after this. That's the great news.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. We have so many options. This episode...
Life is hard.
This episode was number 6, and it's called The Chicken. And, this change of dress organization that she brought that Grace branded her clothes to donate them, this is actually a real thing.
Yeah, it is.
Dress for Success. And it's, I don't know if there's one called Change of Dress too, but it's such a cool organization, and you donate clothes.
I've done it before. They did it at my sorority when we were in college. They came and picked up a bunch of old dresses and stuff that we didn't want anymore. Yeah, it was great.
I just think it's such a cool organization. So shout out to them. We should all give them a little love on social media and in real life, bring our clothes there and help mentor a woman who's trying to get a job.
For sure.
So Grace is doing just that at the beginning of the episode, giving away her old clothes that don't suit her as a human being anymore.
Good pun.
Her what do you call country club
uniform
attire?
Or something?
Yeah, and I love that Frankie goes, "Oh, you can give them away to little doll women."
Yeah, it was really funny. She goes, "We could dress up." She was like, "I was really hoping to have an army full of business casual scarecrows." She's like, "This is really messing up my plan for that."
Can you just picture the beach lined with them?
Yes.
Oh, and they'd have pink blazer and tweed skirts.
Right.
And,
Yes,
looked like a bunch of little Hillary Clintons lined up on the beach.
My dream come true. So she packs up all her clothes, goes to the place, gives the clothes to the lady, and she starts finding out more about this organization. As we said, it's a really cool idea. So she decides she wants to mentor a young woman, and she goes down that path.
Billy is her name.
Was that her
right?
name?
Yeah.
I
Billy.
never caught it.
Yeah,
but but Billy comes to the door, and Grace opens it up, and she's kind of a rocker chick. She's got one of those.
She has a
things through her
septum
nose.
piercing.
Those
Yeah.
always
Those are
scared me
painful,
when I was little. I remember Dennis Rodman's, and I remember because he was on the Bulls. I was like,
Yes.
that must be why he has it, because he's like a
Right.
bull.
Well, I know,
It's good at theory.
right, it allegedly doesn't hurt because it's just cartilage, but
Oh
it's
my
a
God.
loud and it's just I can't.
They
They're
squeezed
so
it
stylish.
really tight with clamps, though,
Did
so
yours
you
hurt?
don't really feel it. This will hurt because they did it with a free needle, and the guy was not very good, and they popped it through
Dominique
scar
has
tissue.
a nose ring for those of you that are audio based. So yeah.
Yeah, so they
Very cool.
Yeah, my roommate got his septum pierced, and I was there, and there is an audible pop, but it's really not that
Ow.
bad.
Not about
The
that
only good
life.
thing about that is I feel like if you did want to take it out for a job, you wouldn't have any sort of scar. You know what I mean? Because it's inside.
Yeah.
Well, a lot
It's
of people have them so they're like a horseshoe, so then they
So
can
you
just
can
flip
flip
them
it
up,
up, yeah.
and you can't even see it.
Oh.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
That's
that
a
would
good
feel weird,
method.
though.
Yeah, but I guess it gives you more options in life, which is what this young lady is looking for when she meets with Grace.
Oh my God! Look at you.
Bro.
So she's a little rough around the edges, and Grace is going through everything. She's giving her a hard time, and she gives her a talking to. She's like, listen, lady, if you want to make it in life, you got to do these following things. So they go through the handshake, they go through her interview process.
Skills, yeah.
I was taking notes.
Yeah.
Grace has some good theories.
I love the thing she said about I have a temper. So she's like, okay, here's how we can spin that. You're passionate.
Yeah, it was nice.
That's a really good idea.
No, I really liked it. Grace reminds me so much of my grandmother. Like, my grandma got her PhD in the 70s, and
Oh my gosh, she's amazing.
she is wonderful. She's my hero. She has 3 pensions now, so she's like the same type
me
of
up.
go-getter. Never sat around. I don't take excuses, and I'm just so happy that Grace has a purpose. We've watched her kind of flail around and try to continue to be the ice queen, try to make a connection with Frankie, try to get over the devastation of 40 years wasted. And I think this is the perfect thing for her, at least in this moment, for her to mentor somebody else coming up she sees potential in, who could maybe do something. I was really happy for her.
I feel like Grace is taking on some feminist perspectives that she never really had before, because she was such a portraying like what the world wanted
she was a little bit of a Stepford wife.
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
while.
It's ironic because she
owned
started
her
this
own company.
Because she also
I know.
was a business
No,
owner.
but she has a
hesitant to say
dichotomy.
that, yeah.
No, you're right. I believe in you. Like with this statement, of course. Like,
I thought about that before I said it because she did start her own company, which is awesome.
But she's got that dichotomy within her.
Yeah, because I feel like she also still, in her mind, held the role of like I'm a traditional like female wife. You know what I mean? Like a lot of it's all about like the glamour and the hair and makeup and the fancy clothes, and so I think this was a moment for her to kind of like empower someone else, and it had nothing to do with like, you know, getting your hair done, or, you know, it was more about like take ownership of your characteristics rather than like your physical traits, which I feel like a lot of what Grace is and her friends that we saw last episode, like it's very superficial rather than like what's on the inside. And I feel like she's kind of starting to appreciate herself and being able to give that to other people, because I feel like she really didn't give that very much to Brianna and Mal. Like she seemed like she was a great mom, I'm sure, to them, but as we saw, like she didn't really appreciate them for what they were. She said, you know, get back to your job. To Mal, and didn't really like appreciate her as a mother. You know, like it was all about the wrong things. And I feel like maybe now she's kind of getting her head in a better place, in a warmer place, where she's able to like be more of like a, not just, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's like she's like a real person now, not just a woman. Like, you know, I feel like she's just like a wholesome more so than she has been in the past, and like is able to give that out to other people.
Definitely. She's multi-layered at this point rather than just focusing all her energy on one thing.
Right.
So she gets her an interview with Brianna. And
I think they would really vibe.
They totally would. Or they would kill each other, but either way it would be interesting.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Really?
Yeah, no.
I think they'd be cool together. Like they're both like badass females. Like
but
I
that,
don't know.
they might clash
but
because of
Brianna's
that.
like, Brianna clearly has a power trip or an ego about where she is in the office, and this chick clearly doesn't have a respect for hierarchy or anything yet.
I don't know.
I think for a comedy, if they wanted to include this girl in it, if she was given a position where she felt like she had a little bit of power, but it was still, the power dynamics were clearly labeled, I feel like they could have a good back and forth, especially if it's someone like, Brianna has a really difficult time standing up to her mother. Like, she can be sassy and funny, but we've seen, like, you know, Mom, I'm running the company now. She had all those issues trying to, like, declare her status as leader, and Grace is getting better at it, but I bet if Grace leaned in really hard, she'd be like, I'll take this girl.
I just gave an example of leaning in really hard. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that they are to an understanding at this point, Bree and Grace, where, you know, Grace has totally stepped back and let Bree run the company. So I don't know. I think everyone's evolving in who they are as a person and how they view the world. But it could have gone either way with these two. So, but anyway, we don't get a chance to see what the relationship would have been like with the septum woman and and Bree. Because she never shows up.
Which stinks, yeah.
Which stinks. And then also a really awkward moment happened, and we're going to circle back to this to get to it as a main topic, but Barry encounters Grace
for the first time
in
a few years,
many years, and
like.
Grace just has no clue who he is, and it's just
she thought she's like, didn't we fire him?
Oh my god!
So
did you
that's
catch that line? Yeah, she was like, did we fire him? And then Brianna was like, okay, get out. Enough out of you.
It's gonna be hurtful when they officially meet.
It's interesting because when Frankie met him, was it Frankie? Yeah, where she like noticed chemistry right away.
Right.
She was like, you two just get a room already. So it's interesting that, you know, Grace still does have some of her old tendencies of like, I think when for a mom, when they see their daughter or son like look into someone else's eyes, you could tell when they like someone, but I think Grace was just like wasn't looking, you know?
Right.
Whereas Frankie looked into Brianna's eyes and was like, I see something here with this guy.
And
like,
she's
what's
more of an
going on?
energy reader too.
Yes.
Grace is all push it down, push it down, push it down, whereas Frankie is, oh, let me tell you about your aura. So there's also just a difference in how they view the world.
And I don't think this. I don't think Grace would ever see Brianna with a guy like this. Like Brianna's such a powerful woman and running a business. Like she probably pictures her someone more like Richard, like
but that's
also running a business.
Gay.
Yeah. Right. But I think I mean, all that's I feel like will probably. But that will probably change though anyway, because this is all part of her change. I think so much of Grace's old habits were about social climbing, and I think that will probably
she's still weaning herself off of that.
I think we also at this point is when we saw Frankie's mock-ups or drawings for her.
Oh yeah, that happened a little earlier.
That's why Frankie was there though. You know? And
so Frankie was there to show her the mock-ups of her potential vagina packaging for her lube. It was very aggressive, the first one we saw.
Well, it was so funny because it was like this head and the entire like long hair. I was actually laughing.
Like
it was really
rainbow
funny.
long. Like,
Yeah, it was like all the way down.
Do you know back in the day? Okay, this made me think. I studied theater in college, and back in the day, they used to have clips, like wiglet clips that they'd clip down there, like extensions for your pubic hair. And
I took theater too, and we did not learn about
well,
this.
listen, we had an extensive curriculum at Michigan State, and that's what
Wisconsin has to catch
that
up.
made me think of.
Y'all, this is where I check out.
He's all about that Brazilian life. So anyway, she's a little bit perturbed by, Bree is a little bit perturbed by this drawing that Frankie, or painting that Frankie has done, because it's a little too graphic. We can't be selling this in the stores. They'll have to put one of those weird blurry images over it, and we don't need that. The next one's more abstract, so she feels good about this.
More of like one of those ink blot drawings where you look at it and you're like,
You can
everyone's
decide
doing
for
something
yourself.
different. Yeah.
I like when she was like, yeah, I painted this with my vagina.
Yeah.
I
It's like a
know.
long paint.
That was
A
like
long
a
paintbrush
strong
and a
pelvic floor.
strong.
The assistant came back
Amazing.
in and he was just like, yeah, no, this is, I'm going to go. I keep wanting to see more of him.
He's
funny.
amazing.
He's wonderful, yeah.
So, but Barry comes in and he instantly knows it's a vagina, and that's when she senses the sexual energy between
Right.
the two of them.
And then they have a little back and forth about, are we going to tell the office? Are we not? And because Barry clearly would love to tell everyone because
This is a win for him.
Yeah.
This is a solid win for
Very.
Barry.
Get
We're
in
not
with the
beating
boss.
around the bush here. He's out of
Literally.
his league. Oh,
Ba-dum-tsh.
God.
Come on.
I walked into that. But you know, in a true Brianna fashion, she fights him and then out of nowhere just runs into the hallway and screams, "Hey, everyone! Barry and I are doing it, and like frequently, if you have a problem, you're fired." Like,
And then the guy that we love, the little assistant, goes back and goes, "We know, no one cares."
and nice,
Like
and nice
Nacho
bra
today.
today.
Oh, great.
Because you're fired for that also.
I'm
So-
really proud of Brianna. I feel like she deserves Barry. Like, Barry's gonna treat you good. Like, he likes
Yeah.
you.
I feel like I don't
he's
know
patient
him well
with
enough.
you.
We saw him in that movie theater episode, and then we saw him a little bit today, or
I
in
feel
today's
like-
episode. But I don't feel like I really like know. I want her to be with him, and he's.
fair.
You don't know if he's good enough for her?
Yeah, like
We don't know
I'm
him.
protective over Brianna's heart. So
No, but see, that's the one thing though. I think we don't really know him as a person, but all we do know is that he's not someone who's gonna F
Hit
her
it and
over.
quit it.
Yeah, he's like not.
he
gonna...
seems like different from what she usually dates, but like I still like with someone like
He's there
her,
for the right reasons.
right reasons. Yeah, I feel like.
air quotes.
I just don't feel like I know him well enough. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like with Grace and Frankie, we've like gotten to know the guys that they date more, and I know the show is centered around them, but like I maybe just have a personal investment in Brianna, but I
Yeah.
feel like I'm not alone with that, where I kind of want to know this guy better.
I feel good about what I've seen so far, but you're
Yeah.
right. We don't know what's beyond the
I don't know.
surface. But
We
I'm
still
sure.
don't know Mal's husband, so.
Oh yeah, I
Where-
think he's dead somewhere. I mean,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Wasn't he a doctor?
I think he said, wasn't he adopted? I'm like, I don't know. He's clearly still got
Coyotes.
issues because he's cut and
Maybe
run.
Coyote.
So, yeah, let's talk about Mal for a minute. Well, so
Still in
she's
bed.
Skyping. She looks like she's been crying or she's sick. Her nose was red.
She's still in bed. I think she's still on bed rest from
Yeah.
the twins,
Yeah.
but
Do
she
we,
looks.
do we assume that like did Brooklyn Decker have like production issues or something like this? Because like why is her storyline like let's always just keep her in a room and be Skyping? Like there
It's
has to
like-
be something.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm
she was
really
doing another
busy.
show or something.
Is she
maybe.
pregnant in real life?
I don't know, but
don't
she
think
doesn't look
so.
pregnant enough, first of all, to be on bed rest. Maybe I just don't know anything about pregnant people, but she doesn't
Right.
look
Yeah,
pregnant
she's not.
enough.
I feel like you're on bed rest when you're like in
Ready
the
to
third
pop.
trimester and
Yeah.
like your
Yeah.
ankles are really bad.
This
you know?
storyline just seems like yeah. There's just something confusing about
Yeah, a
it. So
little
I'm worried. I'm
confusing.
worried that maybe it's going to lead into a little bit of a
Hiatus.
No, I'm worried it's going to lead into a worrisome pregnancy issue. Like, is it
Like she's got-
Is it alluding to something?
Yeah, this
something
show
wrong with
this
her?
show worries me a little bit. Like I think that it is a comedy and it's mostly funny, but there are some like looming clouds above
Right.
us. Like now this Frankie
Yeah.
memory thing and this Mal's pregnancy, like there are some dark clouds in the background that come, and I think that Robert's heart issues are going to continue to be a problem. So
It's like too serious. It's honestly causing me anxiety.
me too. Oh no, the Frankie's memory thing. Like I have personal ties to those kind of
Me
issues,
too.
and so like
Right.
when that happened, my stomach just sunk, and I was like, this is. I could see this show. I don't know where they're gonna go with it because I know like Orange Is the New Black is Netflix and it's a comedy but like I'm usually
It isn't a comedy.
It
It is not a
isn't. It's
comedy.
not, and that's why I worry because this is a comedy. But like I hope that they keep it lighter rather than going on like a really dark route.
Right. The Office is my favorite show
Me
of all
too.
time.
Me too.
Yeah, and the last season it got so
With
dramatic.
Pam and Jim's
I
relationship
couldn't
problems.
take it. The last episode was beautiful the way they wrapped it up. But like
Guys,
I just hope it doesn't happen with this.
You know, it was a less dramatic relationship.
Tell us. Please.
Frankie and Jacob this episode.
Frankie and Jakey.
Yeah, this is a cute little thing that happened. You know, he
that was really
he
sweet.
asked her out on a date, which she took as a business dinner. He was going to come over and bake her some.
Which, by the way, sometimes it's very hard to tell.
I feel like Jacob was not that unclear.
Was he?
about his
Sometimes
also,
it's
like
like,
last
is this a
season,
date?
they
Is this
already
a-
had attempted dates. Where like in
Yeah.
And his body language is very sexual.
Oh, yeah. Like, there
she's
could be
just in
those-
denial because she's nervy.
Yeah, definitely. This is her first embarkment on a relationship since, like, she thought she had found the love of her life for 40 years.
Yeah.
So, totally understand why she's like,
Yeah.
I don't
But I
know
think
what I want.
I just didn't like the way she was acting so naive. I mean, for someone who's so good at reading
Right.
other people's energy, she needs to get on that same page with her own life.
I think she was just in denial. I don't think that she. I think that she knew what it was in her brain.
Yeah.
She
It's
knew what
a-
it was in her heart, but in her she convinced herself it wasn't.
It's also that universal like Hitch complex, you know, like Hitch the movie or whatever, where it's like you can give out advice, but you can never take your own advice kind of thing.
totally.
I feel like everyone feels that way about themselves. I know I do, where it's like
Yeah.
I will sit down and talk about your relationship till I'm blue in the face, and I will give you the best
Totally.
advice. And then all of a sudden, I have a little butterfly in my stomach, and it's like, oh, bye.
Totally get that. It's very it's much easier said than done. That's
It
for sure.
is. But anyway, also one thing that's completely random. Did you see how long that yam was?
Right.
They were all...
Innuendos.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
The first one had like multiple curves and knobs in it, so that one could not have been, unless I don't know what y'all have been experiencing.
It's been weird out here, Zach. Sorry, Mom. So yeah, they have their yam date, and that food looks so
good.
good.
I'm like hungry right now. Thinking
What
about
was
it.
that?
It was a
What was the
tahine.
word? There we go.
Tahine.
What is it?
It's like a vegetable medley, but like
it's
what did
fancy.
he say? It was like a
I'm
12.
less excited.
12. It looks good. 12 vegetables.
I like the
And I
veggies.
feel like seeing that spread, you had to know. Like, this man made all this food by hand. Like,
Yeah,
get it
he was
together.
very
It
When
was-
a guy
a lot
puts
of
your
food in
hair
this
behind your
episode, too.
ear,
And it
you
was-
know he
yeah,
loves
It
it.
was so adorable when he was like, I'm wearing a, what did he say, a sport coat and everything. Come on, like, did you
So
think?
cute.
Yeah.
He's cute. He's really. They have like some good looking older men in this show.
Right?
Like,
Good
Do you know
job,
that guy
casting.
is like 71?
No.
Shut up. Doesn't he look
He
like
looks
he's in his
amazing.
50s?
Good for him.
He looks amazing.
Yeah.
Stunning.
He should teach us his ways.
But, you know, so she kind of does a little soul searching about him with her other two friends who are I forget their names.
Because she rejects him on their date. He tries to
Right.
kiss her, and she's like, "Whoa."
She basically
They-
like says
yeah.
like, let's just be friends. It's not
well, he was
complicated.
he touched her hand, and I think that freaked her out, and she
Right.
jumped across the room.
Yeah, and her friends were like, I don't even want to deal with emotions. I can't do this. Like, what? But also, maybe just have sex with him. Like,
Yeah.
that's where
Right.
it's going to lead to anyway. You know that's where it's going. You need to address this and just either yes or no and move forward. So she comes back and is like, if we go slow, I can maybe do this.
Yeah.
And he was very sweet.
And then she does like the typical sitcom ramble about your feelings, but instead of him stopping her with a kiss, she actually just ends up grabbing his face in the
was
middle
really
of her own
sweet.
ramble and
Sweet.
kisses him.
Girl power.
Which
Loved that.
Yeah.
And then they cut to the next scene.
Darn.
Woof.
Oh, God.
Which before we get into the sad things,
That
I really
chicken looked damn good.
It did, and I also like that they were like doing a Shabbat on a show because I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
times like there's a lot of like Jewish jokes in TV shows and it's kind of portrayed negatively, but this was like kind of a sweet moment where you got to see a little bit into like what that culture is without it being like it's not
But
like
if you,
yeah, it's not like some sort of joke. It
Right.
was just like a nice like this is what Shabbat is for those of you who don't know. Like they sing a little song, they have the dinner. That's what it is.
But
you
if
know?
you think about it, like and it was so smart that they did that, but it ends up like that dinner and the fact that Robert goes through all that to do such a
Nice
important
thing for Saul,
nice thing
yeah.
for him is what ends up spiraling everything out because
Yeah.
Saul comes to it, which is I thought it was. I was very unexpected with the way the scene
me too.
unraveled because I assumed that it was going to be much more dramatic and comedic, and they really brought this moment, which was really kind of more of the issue in the first couple episodes, back. It went away for a break for a couple episodes, and it came back out of nowhere, and it really was just the most subtle, I guess, straw breaking for Saul, and he just sat there and he was like, please sit down and please stay calm.
I really thought that we were going to have to wait to the season finale for this. Like, this was one of those things where I thought that they were just going to keep us hanging
I called it.
Dropping bombs.
Definitely called this last week. I did not see this coming.
That was so upsetting.
So Saul tells him that the night or the day they were moving out of their houses that he had sex with Frankie, and so Robert kind of is stunned, but
he's visually upset and like brings up the fact that they got married.
Yeah, so he said he doesn't even have a complete sentence. I think he just says like, so when we got married
in the hospital,
and Saul is just like trying to be like, I didn't want to upset you more. I was worried about your health. Right. And it's just like this very real moment, and like the silence is stifling.
Yeah,
and the episode ends with Robert just like barely mumbling, "Get out."
Which by the way, I couldn't understand it. I had to rewatch it 3 times, but I mean, it's interesting that he's so upset because, as we spoke about last week, their entire relationship is based on cheating, and so I find it really. No matter what getting cheated on, I guess, is going to hurt. But it's interesting how much it affects Robert when he knows exactly he did much worse to
the literal
his wife.
opposite.
Yeah, and so it's interesting, you know. I'm very curious to see how this is going to unfold. It was
I know.
A big
I feel like
cliffhanger.
we almost like can't really dive into it because we don't know now what happens. Like other than the fact that he's upset, and I have so many things to say about that I would call him a hypocrite and all this, but we don't really know the extent of the aftermath now. It was quite the cliffhanger.
It
for
really
an
was.
episode.
It was.
It was really hard to turn it off. I was like, oh, it was. I don't know. I feel for Robert in so many ways. Like, he's such a great like guy, and they finally are on a good ground. And I understand, like, when I'm sick, I don't feel weak. Like, I'm like, it's fine. I'm sick. I'm just gonna pull through. And I'm guessing that even like after the heart attack, he was like, you need to treat me with these kid gloves. Like, before we said our vows in front of people, before we entered this like commitment, you should have told me. And so yes, it's hypocritical, at 100%, but I totally get where he's coming from. Like, you didn't treat me with enough respect to before we began this, like, for the rest of our lives. I need to know this information.
I don't know. Just like the reality is when the health concerns are so real that at that age and in that state, just upsetting someone is an actual health risk. Like,
right. I think that definitely Saul made the right decision in that moment.
Definitely. I agree.
I disagree completely. I think you should have told him.
Oh, you think before he got his heart surgery? See, I totally disagree because it could have upset him more and it could have killed him. Literally. Like, so when someone's health is that fragile, it could kill you because the emotions are so high. So I don't know. But I get what you're saying because the longer you let it go, the worse it gets. It's a tough situation.
It's really tough.
And it was a very scary situation to leave off on. But before we finish wrapping up this episode, I want to talk about how Grace's ending conversation went with
Billy.
So they're sitting in the bar. She's like, what the hell? Why weren't you there? Why didn't you show up? And Billy's a bartender. And they go back and forth a bit. But Billy goes to her and says, why are you so concerned with getting me a job? Maybe you should get a job. And I thought that was a moment of clarity for Grace where she said, okay, maybe this is the sort of thing I need to start moving forward toward being the person I want to be.
I think Grace is like lacking some purpose right now because as we mentioned, like she has had a job her whole life. She's been running a business. She said since she was 15 she's been working. And so I can see how as a person who's been so career focused, losing that part of you and losing your marriage like all at the same time is losing a lot of your identity. And so maybe, I mean, I know like this is just like a lot of parents once their kids are all grown up and once they're done like with that part of their life, they get a new job, something, a new passion, a new hobby even. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Frankie really has a lot of hobbies and paints and gardens and has all these things she likes to do. But Grace just sits around and drinks kind of. Mm-hmm. And so it's, I mean, that's a great hobby in itself. But at the same time, she can get out and like actually do something, you know? Maybe give her some more purpose, like waking up every day with something to do, you know?
I think so. I hope so. That's actually my prediction.
Yeah.
Oh.
Do you want to do any predictions?
I have one.
Yeah,
okay, we'll do some predictions.
AfterBuzz TV predictions.
You can go first, yeah.
Prediction.
You're gung-ho.
Is that Robert is going to confront Frankie about this. That was like the first thing I thought.
Absolutely.
That was my first thought. When I saw that, I was like, I just kind of want to know like what's going to happen when them two see each other. I don't think it'll be right away, but I think that that's going to come up. And it's going to be very interesting how Frankie reacts because Frankie's not going to give a crap because she's like, how can you feel compassion for someone when they literally have been doing this to you for 20 years out of your 40-year marriage? I think Frankie is a really compassionate person with a lot of empathy, but I don't think she will really feel bad in the situation, especially after how Saul reacted, like with the whole like this was a mistake kind of, and she's like, oh really, your 40-year marriage was the mistake, you know? So I think that Frankie isn't really gonna take it. You know?
And I, just to piggyback off that, I think it's going to be Grace who actually steps in and is like, Robert, are you kidding me with this? Like, get yourself in check. Like, to throw, because Saul's probably going to go to their place. To
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, he's not going to move in
Saul's
with them.
I guarantee you Saul's going to ask to go to the beach, to stay at the beach
I feel like
house
he needs to go
being.
stay with one of his kids or something.
Yeah, that would be a lot more healthy.
He can't go there. There's too many people. That's a small house. Oh man.
I don't really have any predictions, but I think I think there's going to be some sort of a cyclical thing here happening that it's going to somehow bring all four of them back together into this turmoil again. It's going to be kind of how the pieces fell apart in the beginning all over again.
Yeah.
It's very possible. We'll have to stay tuned to see.
Absolutely.
Well, let's go through and tell everyone where they can find us in life and on the internet.
You guys can follow me on the internet at Zach Kelch with an H on both.
And you can find me at Dani Golub on Instagram, Twitter.
And wish her a happy birthday today, everyone.
Happy birthday
Thank
to
you.
ya.
Yeah, please don't try to find us in real life, but you can find me on Twitter at Joelle Monique.
Amen.
All right, we can be friends. You can find me at Lauren Lograsso on all the platforms. And you just watched us on AfterBuzz TV. Be sure to get on iTunes and rate us and like us. And we like you, and we rate you as great. So
5 stars.
5 stars.
have a good one.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.